It's one of the most important steps Donald Trump has taken in the short time he's been president, making a nomination to the Supreme Court. Today, Neil Gorsuch faced hours of questioning during his confirmation hearing, some of it friendly but important, considering a Trump policy or two might end up before the High Court.
Specifically, tell us whether you'd have any trouble ruling against a president who appointed you.
That's a softball, Mr. Chairman. I have no difficulty ruling against or for any party other than based on what the law and the facts in the particular case require. There's no such thing as a Republican judge or a Democratic judge. We just have judges in this country.
Some Democrats are still seething over the treatment of this man, Judge Merrick Garland, who was nominated by President Obama to fill this very seat. Couldn't get a hearing in the GOP-controlled Senate, though. Gorsuch concerns many Democrats because he's known as an originalist, someone who believes the Constitution should be interpreted as it was written 230 years ago. It's the same philosophy as the man he would replace, Justice Antonin Scalia, a conservative icon.
Take the process, the judicial process, very seriously. And I go through it step by step, and keeping an open mind through the entire process as best I humanly can. And I leave all the other stuff at home. And I make a decision based on the facts.
Later, Gorsuch was asked about Roe v. Wade and said he would consider that there is precedent established by the High Court.
Precedent is kind of like our shared family history as judges. It deserves our respect because it represents our collective wisdom.
If the Republicans hold the standard protocol, they'll need some Senate Democrats to join them to hit the benchmark of 60 votes. But they could also go nuclear, so to speak, and change the rules so that only a simple majority is needed for confirmation. A lot's at stake, and joining me to talk about it, our former Attorney General and candidate for Governor, Martha Coakley. She's now a partner at Foley Hoag. Nice to see you, Martha.
A former candidate for governor, too.
Did I say that?
Yeah. No, you said former something and then candidate for governor.
Well, it's nice to see you.
I'm
Again,
not running
whatever
for
you
governor.
are. Thank you. I think we clarified that. Not. Renee Lander is a constitutional law expert. You still are a constitutional law expert. I want to be clear, from Suffolk Law School. Good to see you both. So, from what I understand, before these hearings started, you both were no votes, had you had votes, on Neil Gorsuch. Anything you've heard in the last, 2 days of hearings that would change your mind, Martha
No,
Coakley?
and if anything, seeing those clips and understanding his background just confirms that this is the one open seat, and I think that the leaving it open, and even Ted Cruz saying, if Hillary won, we would have kept it open for another 4 years. That's one factor. But let's say we have a seat we have to fill. I am very concerned about a candidate who says precedent in the Supreme Court is like family history. I'm an originalist. That really doesn't do a lot for me or for Renee, for other people who need the precedent of the evolving arc of civil rights that I don't think this judge, if he's confirmed, and he most likely will be confirmed, will protect.
Are you on the board of Planned Parenthood? You used to be.
I'm on the board of Planned
Parenthood. He did say, he wouldn't say specifically, he being Neil Gorsuch, whether Roe v. Wade was decided correctly. Right. But he did say it's precedent. In fact, then he says the precedent has been reaffirmed. Obviously, it's not enough for Martha Coakley. Is it not enough for you?
I don't think it's enough for me either, because I would really like to know more about how he views precedent. And it's not enough to look at his decisions on the Court of Appeals, because he had to follow what the Supreme Court decided, and now he's in a position to decide whether the precedent should be overturned or not, and I think that's a whole different ballgame. Justice O'Connor in the Casey decision, Planned Parenthood versus Casey at Pennsylvania.
He mentioned this today.
Yes, a few years ago. That one of the issues was that one of the parties was urging the court to overturn Roe v. Wade in that case, and Justice O'Connor laid out a 4-part test, which I'm not going to remember all 4 parts, so don't ask me. But, basically, essentially, has anything changed that would require us to revisit that precedent? And she concluded, and the majority of the court concluded no at that time, and I think that would be the right answer today.
What are the 4 parts again? Harvey Silverglade, who you both know, is civil liberties lawyer, sort of extraordinary. He sent me a note today. Many Democrats in the Senate are trying to convince themselves they have an obligation to vote against what is very likely to be the best SCOTUS Supreme Court of the United States nominee we'll see from Trump. And Gorsuch is actually a very fine nomination on its own, not just the best we'll get from Trump. Forget the last sentence. How about that fact? Barack Obama has said repeatedly, elections have consequences. The consequence is your woman is not elected president. Donald Trump, is not going to pick somebody who you or Hillary Clinton would pick. So as imperfect as he may be, he's surely qualified in terms of intellect and that sort of thing. He still doesn't deserve a seat?
That's not my quarrel. He's clearly bright. He's clearly lots of accomplishments, great writer, great charm offensive today.
Clearly a charm
But the
offensive,
Senate
yeah.
has a job to make sure that, and you're asking me what my vote would be, the Senate has a job to make sure that the people who are going to the Supreme Court, we have one seat open right now. We have a divided court. There are huge consequences to who takes that seat. And at a minimum, those questions about what he would do in Roe versus Wade, look at his dissent in Hobby Lobby, look at some of the positions he's taken. I'm not comfortable.
The religious exemption for certain people vis-a-vis
coverage,
yeah.
well, okay, let's continue for a second. How about this, the best it's going to be thing?
I agree that probably Donald Trump is not going to perhaps nominate someone that I would think would be worthy to be on the Supreme Court, but that doesn't mean that the Democrats should vote yes just because it's the best among bad choices.
But let's talk about Democrats for a minute. One of the most memorable moments, and this is just an excerpt from it, is Ted Kennedy when Ronald Reagan nominated Robert Bork, a speech for the ages. Here's a little bit of what Ted Kennedy had to say.
In Robert Bork's America, there is no room at the inn for blacks and no place in the Constitution for women. And in our America, there should be no seat on the Supreme Court for Robert Bork.
Nancy Pelosi said he's hostile to women's rights. Ed Markey, he's doing the bidding of the NRA. Dick Durbin and Elizabeth Warren, that he's essentially a corporate stooge. They don't call him that. You can't Bork this guy, though, can you? I mean, realistically speaking.
No, I think because he hasn't said, sort of the outrageous, on their face offensive things. It's just all in the small details. If you, I agree with Martha about the originalist stance. It just doesn't do anything for me. We are not living in 1797 anymore.
Yeah, but I realized when you were speaking in the middle, I lost my train of thought. Now I have it back again. You said there's huge consequences. It doesn't have huge consequences, at least in my estimation. He's replacing a guy just like him, one of his idols, Antonin Scalia. It'd be a different story. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, 83, Steve Breyer, 78, swing vote Anthony Kennedy. That'd be a whole different kettle of fish.
Well,
but he's replacing somebody who shares his worldview, no?
And God rest in peace, Antonin Scalia, but, to take somebody now and where we are going to have more vacancies on the court, I think the Democrats and all senators who take their job responsibly have to look at these issues about what the philosophy of the judicial candidate means for how they're going to decide cases.
But can you imagine Donald Trump, getting back to Harvey Silverglade's notion, and I agree with this, is the best, and I think you do, maybe the best that the Democrats will see from Donald Trump. Can you pick one person who would be acceptable to the President of the United States who you would say Democrats should vote for, or is it no to all of them?
I think Merrick Garland should have been acceptable.
But he's not going to pick Merrick Garland.
I understand, but this is now the world we live in, which is we're going to play hardball. You don't even get to nominate anybody. We're going to put someone in and expect you to all go along nicely on it.
A bunch of activist Democratic groups, speaking of Merrick Garland, have basically threatened Democratic senators. I don't mean physically threatened, said, you must do unto this guy what was done by Republicans unto Merrick Garland. Do you subscribe to that notion that since they clearly, it's very hard to argue, even though it was the last year of Barack Obama's term, the Republicans didn't treat him totally unfairly and the president disrespectfully. But did two wrongs in this situation? Is that what the Democrats should do?
Well, but this always happens to the Democrats, right? The Republicans misbehave, the Democrats try to be reasonable, and it gets them nothing.
No, I would disagree with that. The Democrats, by the way, are the ones who lowered the threshold on confirmation for all judges except Supreme Court nominees, and now they may get hoisted on their own vote with the Supreme Court justice.
And the Republicans will do the same thing here if they don't have enough votes.
They will,
They will.
So this is the political
But the
game.
Democrats started it, is what I'm saying.
Right.
They're the ones who lowered the threshold for cabinet nominees and for other judges except Supreme Court nominees.
Well, because the Republicans wouldn't confirm reasonable nominees of the president.
To your point, this is where we are now, and we have a nominee, and every single senator questioning him, voting for him, has the obligation to ask these tough questions.
This is more well, you wanted to say something.
No, I just want to say that I don't but to your question about, the sort of political consequences
yeah.
for Democratic senators, I'm not sure it makes sense for Democrats to sort of actively campaign against their own in this environment right now when the margin is so thin. So I'm not sure that that's a good tactic.
Well, that's my last question
Yeah.
for you, as the politician, or former politician. I want to get that right, Martha Coakley. Don't the Democrats have to pick their spots? At some point, one of the three people I mentioned, two liberals and a swing vote, who often votes with liberals on key decisions, Kennedy, at one point they're going to retire, they may die, I hope them, wish them all long lives. Isn't that the fight Democrats have to make, rather than a replacement for Scalia, who's a pretty qualified guy, as you agree, in terms of skills, even if he philosophically is unacceptable?
I think you pick your spots on cabinet heads, on other kinds of appointments that they all have to do. This one is the major league. This one matters. He's 49 years old. He's going to be there for a long time. By the way, he was a clerk for Kennedy. So it'll be the first time we'll have someone who was a clerk. And
serving on the same.
Yeah, so it's a small, close world, and it has a big impact on what happens for civil rights, for employment discrimination. In his world, corporations always win. In his world, corporations have a First Amendment right. We are already suffering the effects of too much money in politics. The only thing that keeps us free is independent judiciary, a free press, and lawyers who give us access to justice.
Martha Coakley, nice to see you.
Thank you.
Same to you.
Good to see you too. Thank you.